There was nothing. Just pitch black darkness. I was aware that I was asleep. My mind had not fully relaxed, but my body had. I couldn't move, and everything seemed still for the longest time. It felt like hours passed as I lay there, completely stiff from head to toe, but yet my thoughts were uninterrupted. I was able to reimagine the events of the entire day right then and there, starting from the discovery of the mushroom, leading all the way up to the magnificent creation I had just concocted. It was all so clear, so vivid in my mind, perhaps just fresh from the day, or an unintended effect of the drink. All at once, the blank blackness swirled and churned in every direction around me as I just lay there, helpless to the event before my eyes. A bright white color seeped through the blackness like a wild river, flooding it with cracks and streams of illumination. I could feel a breath of wind breaking through the cracks in the deep black shell around me, the temperature quickly dropping while it whistled through the fractures. I felt the chill grasp at my entire body, the icy fingers running along every surface of my skin. I could feel crystals of ice forming on the hairs around my arms, legs, and in my beard, each little strand becoming encased in a thin layer of frost. I let out a heavy breath, a misty cloud releasing outwards softly. I couldn't turn around to see, but it felt as if there was nothing behind me at all. I was just floating in the midst of the space around me, watching the show above as it happened. A sudden splitting noise came from the ceiling, a large chunk of the blackness breaking into millions of pieces, turning to dust soon after, to be blown away by the wind. The bright whiteness behind the deep dark was almost blinding. It created a chain reaction, several pieces snapping off after, like an eggshell being broken open. The brightness flooded the area, eating away at the dark until it was all gone, turned to little grains in the current of the wind. I wanted to shield my eyes, but couldn't from the stiffness. I was forced to watch everything as it happened before me, just lost in the confusion of it all. The brightness faded away, revealing more than just the plain two colors I had previously witnessed. Up above was a deep blue sky, almost like an ocean far in the heavens. Beneath that were hills of deep red rock, gray grass, and trees filled with bright red leaves. I felt a soft backing against mine suddenly, noticing that I was laying amongst the desaturated foliage on a small hillside. My arms and feet slowly began to tense up, feeling returning to them bit by bit. I was able to crane my neck to look around further. Aside from the oddly colored earth, there was not much else. To the side, a small brown wooden shack lay in the midst of a field. I strained slightly, just barely moving my appendages and forcing myself to sit up. The breeze hadn't died down. It was just swishing through the strange landscape, sending the leaves and blades of grass into gentle sways. As the feeling slowly returned to my body, I could gently begin to move in small bits at a time. I twitched my fingers lightly, feeling the blades of foliage against them, the stone-inlaid dirt below my palms. I curled my toes, staring at them blankly in front of me. I slowly arched my back and let out a light groan. It took me a slight moment before I could turn and kneel on the earthen platform, pushing myself up to stand finally after such a time. I brushed my cloak off and looked around the barren landscape, seeing nothing else of interest. I brought my hands up to look at them. My body was normal with no strange otherworldly changes. There was no telling where I was at this point. The only thing I could do would be to explore. I stepped forward down the hillside towards the small shack, still feeling slightly dizzy. The grass crept between my toes and rubbed at the soles of my feet during the short walk. It was a blissful feeling more than anything. I noticed that it was becoming easier to breathe and move the closer I got to the small, oddly familiar shack. I felt a sudden urge to look upwards into the sky, pausing in the field to stare. The deep blue color was swirling, a bright white circle appearing in the middle of it all. It was as if a rift was opening up above me, the blue clouds spinning violently around the bright light, being sucked into it. The color faded to a light violet around the edge of the massive area. The wind picked up harshly, blowing loudly around, forcing me towards the shack for shelter. I drew my hood up above my head and began to run, my usually creaky joints not making a single noise. I reached the small structure in almost no time, looking up again to see the funnel above sucking more of the clouds away. I pressed to the door, fumbling to reach the handle in my fright, finding it just in time to get inside as a crack of thunder boomed very near me. I shut the door and sat still against it, holding it closed behind me, letting out a sigh of relief. I breathed slowly for a short while, just trying to relax myself. The shack itself had looked oddly familiar, but the inside was most unusual. The furniture was strewn about in the middle of the room at all different angles. The bed was upside down in the corner, a small table upon the top of it. Dressers, nightstands, and other small furnishings all lay about the area in a most disorganized state. It was hard to tell if this place was lived in, or even had been. I pressed around the odd arrangement, finding that a small gap was left between all the pieces, almost forming a path. Curiously, I sidled between all the wooden parts to see where it would lead. I curved around more and more furnishings, noticing that this seemingly small house was much larger inside than it had appeared. There had to be a reason for this strange arrangement, but I just couldn't tell what. I stopped partway and groaned, feeling that I was wasting my time. I whipped around to go backwards, just in time for a dresser behind me to thrust its drawers open sternly, making me jump. The rest of the furniture behind it followed the same, tilting, opening, and turning to clutter the path and block me from returning to the front. I forced myself against the drawers, completely unable to make them budge even an inch. I took a step back and sighed loudly, trying not to let my fright take hold in this strange world. There was no choice but to press forward, preferably as quickly as possible now. I turned around again to continue my journey through the clutter. After several more curves, the path straightened out into a row of bookcases, all of which led far to the back of the building. I had enough space to move freely between them, breaking into a run towards the end. I turned behind me to see the cases begin toppling over, crashing into one another, chasing me to move ever faster. At the end of the hallway, there was a large, extremely ornate, dark oak wardrobe. I swung it open without hesitation, my mouth ajar at what was ahead. There was no backing to the piece, but a hollow doorway, leading to a short set of cobblestone steps, which delved into a dark pit. I heard the thundering crashes of the cases behind me as they continued to fall, and leaped into the wardrobe without looking back, the doors shutting behind me forcefully. I crept down the short bit of steps and into the dark, a very dim bit of blue light emanating from the middle. I moved into a small, perfectly squared room, the light gently pulsating in the middle of it. I stepped forth towards the beacon and stood before it as it swirled in front of me. It beckoned me to follow, it seemed, as it swayed side to side, lighting my path through the pitch-black hall. I followed the small sprite intently, curious now more than frightened. It led me through a small hallway, taking a sharp turn to the side a few paces ahead. I turned the corner to see a bright display, 2 large candles hanging along the black brick wall, directly next to a large, opulent silver mirror. One of the candles was lit, a vibrant blue flame sparking from it as the other sat cold and untouched. The little light charged towards the mirror, turning towards the unlit candle, landing on the very top of it, igniting another chilling-looking flame. I cautiously stepped forward towards the mirror, the only object in the room, and nowhere else to go. I approached nervously, keeping my head down low. As I reached the edge of it, I tilted up slightly, bringing my hands up to release my hood and look inside the reflective portal, my jaw falling agape at the visual of myself now before me.